Today, we're going to tackle a huge paradox in the workplace, and we're going to expose why the story most leaders tell themselves about employee feedback, it's almost completely wrong. Okay, let's jump right in.
So, if you're a leader, you've seen this play out, right? Your survey response rates are dropping. You can practically feel the collective eye roll when another feedback request pops up, and you land on a really simple diagnosis. Your people have survey fatigue. They're just tired of being asked. Case closed. Or is it?
Well, you might be surprised to hear this, but all the data points to one thing. That diagnosis is way off. The answer is a pretty straightforward no. Your employees are not tired of you asking for their opinion. In fact, it's the total opposite. Get this. A staggering 78% of employees are actively eager to take company surveys. They really want to tell you what's working and, more importantly, what's broken. They want to help the company succeed. So no, the survey is not the problem here.
So, what's really going on? The real illness isn't survey fatigue, it's inaction fatigue. Think about it. When almost half of your workforce, we're talking 45%, feels like their feedback just disappears into a black hole and leads to absolutely no change, well, they don't stop caring. They just stop talking.
And this brings us to a really critical choice. We have to move away from the old way of doing things. You could almost call it the annual autopsy, and start embracing something that's alive, something that's in real time, a strategic pulse. And wow, this chart just lays out the difference so clearly. That old annual survey, it was this massive, once-a-year monster owned by corporate HR. I mean, by the time you even got the data, months had gone by. It was basically historical forensics. But the new strategic pulse, it's short, it's frequent, and it's owned by the managers right there on the front lines. This shrinks the time it takes to act from like half a year down to just a few weeks. It's the perfect antidote to inaction fatigue because it is built for speed. Now here's where it gets really interesting. This shows us what's called the action gap. Look at this. 71% of companies say, yeah, we share the results, but only 51% of their employees actually see any real change happen. That 20-point difference? That is the canyon where trust goes to die and cynicism is born. You have to remember, every survey is a promise, and this gap, well, this gap is a promise broken. So the big question is, how do you close that gap? It's not about writing better survey questions. It's about building a whole new framework. Let's call it the architecture of trust. And the goal is simple. Protect the people giving the feedback so you can get the purest, most honest information possible. This architecture, it stands on three main pillars. First up, the promise of action, because, words without deeds are pretty meaningless. Second, the structure of safety, creating a space where people know that being honest is rewarded, not punished. And third, the gift of insight, learning how to see criticism not as an attack, but as a catalyst for getting better. Okay, let's start with action, because the difference here is just night and day. Organizations that actually do something with the feedback they get, they see engagement rates that are, wait for it, 12 times higher the very next year. Their survey response rates stay high, and they're 6 times more likely to absolutely crush their financial goals. And in the low-action companies, well, you're just breeding quiet quitting and watching your best people head for the exit. All right, let's talk about that second pillar, safety. And this is where a seemingly small technical detail can make or break all the trust you're trying to build. There is a huge difference between anonymous and confidential. Anonymous means nobody knows who said what, period. It's perfect for really sensitive topics. Confidential, on the other hand, means a secure system knows who you are for data analysis, but your manager only ever sees the combined group-level results. Getting this distinction right is absolutely non-negotiable. And the main tool for protecting that confidentiality is something called the anonymity threshold, or N size. It's just a simple rule. If any group has fewer than, say, 5 people in it, the system hides the results for that specific group. This is crucial because it stops what some people call managerial sleuthing, where a boss with a tiny team tries to connect the dots and figure out who said what. It's a simple little rule, but it's totally fundamental for psychological safety. But, real safety takes more than just the right software settings. The best organizations build structural protections. For example, they put in place an action freeze, a 90-day pause on any negative job action after an employee gives some tough feedback. They train their managers to spot all those subtle little micro-retaliations, and most importantly, they make preventing retaliation a core part of how a manager's performance is even measured. And that brings us to our third pillar, insight. Now, this one requires a pretty radical shift in mindset because we have to reframe something most leaders are taught to fear: negative feedback. The truth is, that really stinging criticism, it might just be the most valuable gift your organization gets all year.
I mean, this quote just says it all, doesn't it? The most dangerous signal you can ever get from your team is silence. An employee who's already checked out, they're not going to spend 20 minutes writing you a detailed, passionate essay on a broken process. No way. They're too busy updating their LinkedIn profile. That long, critical comment, that's not a crisis. That is a sign of investment.
So let's break down how to read feedback strategically. You see a ton of negative comments. The old way of thinking says, "Oh no, it's a morale crisis." The strategic way says, "Wow, look at all this investment. This is a gold mine of ideas." You see silence or just bland, neutral answers? That's not stability. That's your early warning sign for quiet quitting. And criticism of leadership? It's not a personal attack. It's a free diagnostic telling you whether or not you've actually built a culture where people feel safe enough to speak up.
So, okay, we've built our architecture of trust. We've got action, safety, and insight. But what's the actual real-world payoff for all this? Let's connect this to the bottom line, because the financial reward for getting this right is, well, it's absolutely enormous.
And let's be totally clear about this. This is not some fluffy HR initiative. This isn't about being nice. The choice to build a workplace where people genuinely feel heard and valued is one of the smartest economic decisions a company can possibly make. Take a look at this number. Research actually shows that for a large company, just a single point increase in employee happiness is linked to an average profit increase of $1.39 billion. That's billion with a B. And it makes total sense, right? Happier people are more innovative, they're more productive, and they're way less likely to leave. Well-being isn't a cost center, it's a growth engine. And the scale of this isn't just about one company. It's global. The potential economic value of putting holistic workplace health first is estimated at a mind-boggling $11.7 trillion. This isn't just about creating a better company culture. This is the next frontier of competitive advantage, plain and simple. And yet, despite that huge opportunity, look at where most companies are right now. Only 15% have really gotten to that highest stage of continuous listening. The vast majority? They're stuck in the less effective, more sporadic modes. But you know what this chart really shows? It's not failure. It's a wide open field for any organization that's willing to get serious about listening. So, as we wrap things up here, the main takeaway is this. Moving from that dead annual autopsy to a living, strategic pulse isn't about buying new software. It is not a technological upgrade. It is a fundamental cultural reset. It's about trading the illusion of control for the real power of being responsive. And that really leaves us with one last question to chew on. In your organization, are you truly listening to its living, breathing pulse? Or are you just waiting for the autopsy?